Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty significant, a crisis, really, that a lot of organizations, maybe even communities you're part of, are facing, even if they don't quite name it.
That's right. It's this idea of a maturity bottleneck.
Exactly. And the core issue, based on the sources we're looking at today, isn't really about a lack of, say, teaching or discipleship programs. It's deeper.
It is. It's about people getting stuck. They consume information, content, teaching, but they never quite make that leap into reproducing what they've received, into helping others grow.
And that shift from consumption to reproduction, that's everything, isn't it?
It really is. The sources we're digging into argue for, well, a pretty disruptive reorientation.
Disrupted how?
They basically say that the true measure of spiritual maturity isn't just about how much you know or how devout you feel privately or even how busy you are serving inside the current system.
Okay, so it's not about piety or knowledge accumulation.
No. It's ultimately measured by outward reproduction. Are you equipping others? Is your life helping someone else take the next step?
So a healthy system has to be regenerative. It can't just end with the individual.
Precisely. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack that blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
How do you shift from just, maintaining attendance figures to actually multiplying mature individuals who can then lead and reproduce themselves?
Right, defining success differently. Not by what we know, but by who we empower, based on those early church patterns of, like, generational transmission.
Exactly.
Okay, let's dive into that core problem first. You mentioned this bottleneck creates exhaustion. How does that play out? If dependency is the norm, what does that feel like for leaders?
Oh, it feels like burnout, mostly.
Yeah.
The sources paint a picture of leaders running basically a spiritual concierge service. They're constantly in demand, answering every question, solving every problem.
Right, providing every next step.
Yes. And it's exhausting because the system, maybe unintentionally, has taught people to rely on that central figure for everything. Insight, direction, you name it.
And that's completely unscalable.
Totally. You end up with this pyramid where all the weight is crushing the few at the top, while meanwhile you got all these potential leaders just sitting there.
Waiting, maybe feeling they need some official title or permission slip before they can actually do anything meaningful.
Exactly. They feel underutilized because the system hasn't really empowered them to reproduce.
So that forces us to rethink that whole scorecard. We tend to assume culturally that if someone knows a lot, attends regularly, maybe serves on a team, they're mature.
Right. The knowledge equals maturity assumption.
But if all that intake, all that consumption still results in dependency on a leader, well, then something's fundamentally off, isn't it?
It suggests the system isn't achieving its ultimate purpose. The sources say the real test, the practical litmus test, is, does your life reproduce what you claim to believe?
And this connects back to that core scriptural idea, right? The generational discipleship model.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about that principle from Timothy 2.2 paraphrase. It's like, what you've learned from me, find reliable people and entrust it to them so they can then teach others.
So it's built in,
Yeah.
this multiplication.
It's the DNA. Maturity wasn't designed to be a destination you arrive at and just, stop. It was meant to flow through you, like a relay race, not a cul-de-sac.
Okay. And this isn't just theory or ancient history. The sources point out that this is actually happening globally now.
Yes. The fastest growing movements, networks, whatever you want to call them, they often look very different. They're decentralized.
Meaning not reliant on one central hub or leader.
Right. They're self-sustaining. They're built around this core idea of reproduction. Everyone is expected to pass it on.
And they thrive because they're designed to transmit, not just accumulate people or resources in one place.
Exactly. And that's the warning, really, for more established organizations. If you ignore this shift towards multiplication, you risk building something, maybe something quite impressive on the surface, but something that ultimately can outlive its founders because it depends too much on them.
Okay, that's a stark warning. So, the future belongs to models that prioritize multiplication and release, not just maintenance.
That seems to be the core argument.
Which leads us neatly into the how, the blueprint. If multiplication is the goal, you can't multiply something incredibly complex. It has to be repeatable.
Correct. And that's where the idea of the transferable core comes in.
Yeah.
This is absolutely critical.
Why critical?
Because multiplication just dies when things get too complicated. You can't easily replicate massive training binders or complex programs or, a 10-step initiation process.
Right. It becomes overwhelming. People revert to being consumers of the complicated system.
Exactly. So the transferable core needs to be, well, simple, memorable, A set of core truths and core practices that are low entry, high impact. Things anyone can grasp quickly.
And feel confident passing on almost immediately.
Yes, that's the key. Confidence to transmit.
So let's break that down. Core truths. How do you simplify deep truths without making them shallow? That's a real tension. You can't just hand out slogans.
It's not about watering down theology. It's about simplifying the articulation for the purpose of transmission. The sources suggest keeping it really minimal for that initial transfer.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like having a really clear two-sentence summary of the gospel message. Something anyone could share naturally in, say, 60 seconds, without jargon. Accessible, reproducible.
Okay, so the depth comes later, perhaps, but the initial spark has to be easily shareable.
Right, and then you pair those core truths with core practices. Simple, repeatable, daily or weekly rhythms that actually build character and embed the truth.
These aren't massive commitments then.
No, think micro rhythms. The material gives examples like the 101 prayer.
Okay, what's that?
Super simple.
Yeah.
10 slow breaths focusing on praise or gratitude.
Yeah.
Then 10 seconds of just silence listening. And then one single sentence petition or request.
Ah, okay. Takes prayer from being this daunting hour-long thing to a doable daily micro habit. Yeah.
Exactly. Builds a rhythm. Or for scripture engagement, something like read tell.
Retell.
Read a short passage, maybe just a few verses, and then immediately tell someone, or even just journal, one honest thing that struck you, or that God seemed to be saying through it.
So shifting from academic analysis to personal application and then immediately verbalizing it.
Right. It makes it active, not passive. And for outreach, there's story invite.
Okay.
Sharing your own personal story, maybe just a 90-second version focused on a specific change, and ending it with a simple, open-ended invitation question for the listener.
So these are all habits, not programs, easy to teach, easy to copy.
And crucially, easy to pass on. Someone learns read tell, they can teach someone else read tell that same day.
That paints a clear picture,
Yeah.
and this whole idea, the shift in focus, is captured really well by that parable. The sources use the one about the lantern and the torch. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, it's a great visual. The lantern represents, your private devotion, your personal growth, maybe your good works. It's beautiful, it glows, provides light for you and maybe your close circle.
Contained light.
Right, it's essential, but it's contained. The torch, on the other hand, represents reproducible faith. It's designed to be handed off.
To light other torches.
Exactly. The idea is you light your torch from your lantern, your inner life fuels your outward sharing, and then you hand that torch out. And they hand their torch out.
And suddenly you don't just have individual points of light, you have a network. A spreading flame.
A network of light across the land. That's the image. The call is to be torch lighters, ensuring that internal reality gets shared in a way that multiplies.
Okay, but let's push on that tension again. If you focus so much on the torch, on passing it on quickly, simplifying everything, do you risk neglecting the lantern? Do people end up as, functionally reproductive but spiritually shallow?
That's the critical balance, and the sources are clear. The reproducible core must include those character-forming microrhythms, like the 101 prayer or retell.
Ah, so the practices are key to keeping the lantern lit.
Yes, it's not an either. The private practice, lantern,
Yeah.
fuels the public, reproducible action, torch. They work together. You absolutely need that robust inner life, otherwise the leaders you release will be fragile. They'll burn out or cause damage.
Got it. So the process itself has to build both character and capacity for reproduction, which brings us to the structure the sources lay out, these 5 stages of maturity. They call it a living map.
Yeah, a map that shows how someone moves intentionally from just receiving information to actively multiplying. How knowledge turns into action, and then action turns into multiplication.
Okay, let's walk through them. Stage 1, awakening, or sometimes called growing. This is that initial spark, right? Conversion, the start of the journey.
Right, the very beginning. And the key need here, according to the sources, immediate belonging, connection, and super clear, simple next steps, like baptism, maybe connecting with one specific mentor or guide, feeling part of a community, building trust.
And what's the big trap leaders fall into at this stage?
Overwhelming them, dumping a truckload of doctrine on them, or expecting them to navigate a complex church program schedule before that basic foundation of trust and belonging is even solid.
Trying to make them scholars before they feel like family.
Exactly. Keep it simple, relational, and clear at stage 1.
Okay, then comes stage 2, rooting, also called reaching. This is about building that basic identity and embedding those spiritual habits.
Yep, this is where those daily microrhythms we talked about really gets cemented. and it's often where the first intentional outward step happens.
Like the story invite.
Could be, or something even simpler, like what some sources call the Serve One Act. Just intentionally doing one practical act of kindness or service for a neighbor, a colleague, someone outside the existing circle.
Just flexing that outward-looking muscle for the first time.
Right. And crucially, the culture here must normalize imperfection. Growth is messy. People will stumble. If the environment demands instant perfection, they'll just freeze up and never risk moving forward.
That fear of failure stalls everything. Okay, so after rooting comes what feels like the real engine room for development. Stage 3, apprenticeship, or storying.
Yes. This is where it gets hands-on, life on life, where theology stops being theoretical and starts being embodied, modeled, practiced.
How does that practically work?
The apprentice goes through a clear process. First, they just shadow the leader, watching closely. Then they start co-leading certain tasks, with the leader right there providing support and feedback. And finally, they take the lead on something, but still under the leader's oversight and coaching. This whole phase might take, say, 90 to 180 days, focused purely on practical application and skill transfer.
And the sources pull out a key insight here from the Apostle Paul's approach. He looked for something specific first in potential apprentices.
Character. Specifically, are they faithful? Are they reliable? Before assessing their raw talent or charisma.
Why prioritize reliability over, say, sheer gifting or competence? Seems counterintuitive to how we often hire or select leaders.
Because, as the thinking goes, capacity without character is dangerous. Someone super talented but unreliable. They might crash and burn, or worse, misuse their influence down the line.
They create fragile leadership.
Exactly. The sources argue you invest your core developmental energy in those who've demonstrated faithfulness, resilience, dependability. They're the ones more likely to carry the torch faithfully and pass it on intact.
That's a significant filter. Okay, so if someone proves reliable through apprenticeship, they move to stage 4, entrustment. Or leading, this is the actual handoff.
Yes, the intentional transfer of real authority and responsibility. And it shouldn't be done casually or behind the scenes.
How should it be done?
It needs to be a public, recognized moment, often involving some kind of commissioning, maybe a prayer, a charge given in front of others. It validates the new leader.
Gives them legitimacy.
Right. And this is vital release doesn't mean abandonment. You don't just push them out of the nest.
Okay.
The sources stress providing a relational safety net immediately following entrustment.
A safety net, like what you mentioned, a triad.
Yeah, typically it involves 3 key relationships for the new leader. A mentor, someone ahead of them offering wisdom. A peer, someone at a similar stage for mutual support and accountability. And a sponsor, someone who advocates for them, opens doors, champions them within the broader network or organization.
Mentor, peer, sponsor.
Okay.
That provides support from multiple angles.
Exactly. Ensures they're not isolated as they step into that new responsibility.
Which then allows them, hopefully, to reach the final stage. Stage 5, multiplication, or generating. This is where the cycle completes.
Right. The leader who was entrusted now becomes an entruster. They shift focus. They're not just leading their one group or team anymore.
What's their new focus?
They become a coach of coaches. Their primary role shifts to identifying, developing, and releasing other leaders who can repeat the whole process.
So they're building geometric growth now, not just adding members.
That's the goal. They might use frameworks like a 3x3 training cycle, intentionally pouring into 3 potential leaders, equipping them until they can each train 3 more.
And their success isn't measured by their own group size anymore.
No. It's measured by how many other reproducing leaders they successfully generate and launch.
Wow. Okay, that whole 5-stage map lays out a clear pathway, but it hinges entirely on that moment of release, of entrustment. And that seems like the hardest part for established leaders and organizations.
It is. It runs counter to so much institutional thinking.
Why is it so hard to let go of people you've poured into?
Because most of our systems measure success by accumulation. More people, more budget, more volunteers here. When you release your best, most trained leader to go start something new,
your numbers go down, at least locally, temporarily.
Right. And that triggers what the sources call the fear of loss. Fear of losing influence, losing control, losing your star player. That fear is probably the single biggest obstacle to multiplication becoming the norm.
So how do you overcome that, if that fear is so ingrained?
It requires a major cultural shift. Leaders have to start genuinely celebrating departures for the sake of multiplication, seeing it as the ultimate win, not a loss.
Reframing it.
Exactly. Teaching a theology of stewardship that your influence isn't something to hoard, but something to invest and release. realizing that sending people out actually increases your impact exponentially, even if it doesn't show up on your local attendance sheet immediately. You gain far more kingdom ground by giving away than by holding tight.
That is a radical redefinition of success, which means the old metrics just don't work anymore, do they? If we're measuring movement, not just maintenance, attendance KPIs are kind of irrelevant.
Or at least secondary. We need different vital signs. The sources highlight three key metrics for a multiplication culture.
Okay, what's the first one?
The reproduction rate. It's simple. How many new disciples or new groups or new leaders are being produced per existing leader per year?
Okay, a direct measure of output. Is there a target?
Often, the goal suggested is a rate greater than or equal to 1, meaning each leader is, on average, reproducing at least one other leader or group annually. That signals healthy multiplication.
Got it. Reproduction rate. What's number 2?
Time to first transmission, or sometimes called time to entrustment. Basically, what's the average number of months it takes for someone to go from awakening, that initial conversion or connection, all the way to being entrusted to lead or disciple someone else, stage 4.
Ah, so that measures the efficiency of your discipleship pathway. How quickly are you actually moving people towards reproduction?
Precisely. The goal isn't speed for speed's sake, cutting corners. It's about ruthlessly removing unnecessary complexity and delays in the process, making the path clear and effective.
Okay, efficiency. And the third metric, you mentioned avoiding shallow multiplication earlier.
Right. That's tracked by the sustainability factor. What percentage of the new groups or new discipleship relationships are still healthy, functioning, and ideally reproducing themselves after, say, 12 months?
So that ensures you're building something with depth, not just starting lots of things that fizzle out quickly.
Exactly. It balances the push for multiplication with the need for genuine health and resilience, reproduction rate, time to transmission, sustainability factor. Those give you a much clearer picture of movement health.
Okay, this is a lot. It feels like a fundamental redesign for many. If someone listening right now feels a bit overwhelmed but also convicted by this, what's the one practical first step? Where do you even begin?
Yeah, it can feel huge.
hmm
But the sources stress that multiplication starts small. The urgency is there. Embracing this is about unlocking a movement. But the action can be focused.
So what action?
Identify one person. Just one person you're currently mentoring or leading who seems reliable, faithful, maybe they're that apprenticeship storying stage, stage 3, and make an intentional commitment. I'm going to focus on moving this one person to entrustment leading, stage 4.
Pour into that one person with the specific goal of releasing them.
Yes. Develop them, prepare them, plan their commissioning, set up their safety net, and then intentionally empower them. Watch them start to generate life, just like someone hopefully did for you. It starts one person at a time.
Right. It doesn't have to be a system-wide overhaul overnight. Start with one apprentice, aim for one entrustment.
That's the foothold.
We've covered a lot of ground. The bottleneck of consumption, the need for a transferable core, those 5 stages mapping the journey, and the metrics that actually measure multiplication. It really is about fundamentally changing how we define success.
It is. To quickly recap the core argument running through all these sources, maturity isn't meant to be a personal achievement, a monument you build for yourself where you finally arrive and stop. It's designed to be a launch pad you build for others. And the future vitality of any mission, any organization really, depends on nurturing leaders who can eventually thrive and reproduce without perpetual handholding.
That's a powerful summary. And it leaves us, and you listening, with maybe a provocative thought to chew on this week. Drawing from that core tension we discussed, the difficulty of letting go, the sources consistently remind us that the gospel, the core message, it's contagious by design. The whole system is built for movement, for passing life on. So here's the question. What if the Great Commission wasn't just a command to go, but also an invitation to let go?